Welcome into another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. We're talking Dynasty Fantasy Football and the departures in free agency. What does it mean for the players left behind or taking a new position after the free agents have been on their way? Right now on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. What up, everybody? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, joined by my man's Matty Styles. And we got Jefferson in the place as well. We'll go with the try box here. We did have a quad box set up, but our boy Derek Favret is getting ready for some baseball draft this evening. Excited about that. 'Tis the season. Make sure, if you're not already, make sure to follow the boys on the baseball side, the flagship of the Razzball program, of course. But here tonight, we're talking about fantasy football and the dynasty outlook of what it means for the departures in free agency. We've talked a lot about the players, where they've gone, the new teams that they're on, what the new situations look like for all those guys, but we haven't talked a lot about the players that are being left behind or getting new, fresh opportunities, or maybe not having the best opportunities because of a new addition to their team. Once again, I'm Sky Guasco, your host. You can find everything Razzball at Razzball NFL on Twitter. You can, of course, subscribe right here to the YouTube channel and find us on the podcast at Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, anywhere you listen to your audio. All of our articles also available for free on Razzball.com. You can find it easier at football.razzball.com. Gentlemen, good evening. Very excited for this one. This is a kind of a fresh approach here. We're looking at kind of an alternative angle here. We did also have a couple of players that have moved since the last time all of us were on our program together. So I do want to get our quick thoughts on a few wide receivers specifically who have moved in the last couple of days. Matty Styles, I'm going to welcome you in first, my man. Who do you like to talk about here? We got a couple players that have been in motion over the last few days. Which one kind of jumped off the map for you that we haven't talked about?
It was actually, I think, last week, Jerry Jeudy going to Cleveland. I don't know that that's a better spot for him, but he went from having no quarterback in Denver to having a weird quarterback situation in Cleveland. And we heard the news today, right? He's getting $41 million guaranteed. My bold prediction, you ready, Jeff? You sitting down?
Yeah.
Jerry Jeudy will not have any catches over the middle to jeopardize his health and the guaranteed $41 million that he's going to be putting in the bank.
Man, 58 total over 3 years, 41 million guaranteed. That's a lot of guaranteed money for a wide receiver who incredible pedigree coming out of Alabama, which all of them do. Fine in spurts, but not the consistency that we expected when he came out. Him and CeeDee Lamb are that 1 and 2 in that class, and CeeDee Lamb obviously has completely taken that over. Jeff, welcome into you this evening, my man. Who would you like to talk about quickly here in the wide receiver category of a couple players who've been moving over the last couple of days?
Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure. One guy I'm looking at is Keenan Allen getting traded to Chicago. It's an interesting move there for him, Chicago acquiring him. Well, they already have DJ Moore, and then later they trade Justin Fields. So still think, though, he's in a good position because obviously now they're taking Caleb Williams now. Number one, so he'll be a nice security blanket for him over the middle. And now with Shane Waldron there, they're going to run probably more three receiver sets as they did in Seattle. So I wouldn't say he's in a better position than he was last year, but I still think he's in a very good position to produce.
I like that. I totally agree. And look, 32 years old, a lot of people have an issue with the age, but there's a lot of comparisons with him throughout his career and now later in his career with the legend Larry Fitzgerald, who actually more or less had about 90% of a career year at his age 32 season as well. And he's been that number one drawing double coverage in Los Angeles / San Diego his entire career. He probably is not that guy. That's DJ Moore now. So more single coverage. He's one of the best at getting open in the NFL in general. So I'm still all about my boy Keenan Allen. I'm going to touch briefly on Marquise Brown. We've kind of forgotten about him a lot. I know Bob talks about him quite a bit. He's been a believer for a number of years, but kind of just had a couple big performances with the Cardinals, started with the Ravens. Now he goes with the Chiefs, just a 1-year prove-it deal for $11 million. We know what that means with the Chiefs. He can be the burner. He could be the downfield option. Nobody's Tyreek Hill, but Rashee Rice is not that guy either. So Marquise Brown probably stepping into that Marquez Valdez-Scantling role but with potentially better hands and more reliable. So I do like Marquise Brown in redraft quite a bit as a mid to late round, wide receiver 4 on your roster. You can slip in with bye weeks and upside. But in Dynasty, I'm still not quite sure what's going to happen because he does only have that 1 year with Mahomes. Then where does he end up landing? So a couple of names there. There's a couple of the wide receivers who also moved around a little bit, including Cedric Wilson, Rondale Moore, Curtis Samuel, and of course, our boy Mikey Wills, who we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Alexander Madison was also on the move since we last talked, and then a couple auxiliary players that don't have much to do with fantasy, especially at the quarterback positions backups. But, gentlemen, let's turn on to the Pittsburgh football Steelers here. These are the guys that were on our graphic to kick off the show. And what's interesting about what they've done in Pittsburgh is not only bringing Russell Wilson, who, look, people either believe in Russell Wilson, which I actually happen to, or they think that he's washed up. Either way, he's basically free for Pittsburgh. They're paying him $1.2 million. $1.2 million for anybody is basically free in NFL terms. For an NFL quarterback, that's unbelievable. Denver is paying Russell Wilson $38 million this year. So they got a free square. So they go and they get Justin Fields as well. There's a couple trade situations in there too that could be interesting on NFL draft day. But before we get into that, let's talk quickly about what it means here for the Steelers and what it means mainly for like the teams that are leaving. For the Bears, we expect them to pick Caleb Williams. We'll see what actually happens, but obviously they've reloaded. And then for the Broncos, mainly just Cortland Sutton because Jerry Jeudy, as Matt just said, has left. And then, of course, George Pickens with the Steelers because now Deontay Johnson has also left in Carolina too. So a lot of moving pieces here. Matt, I'm going to turn to you first. Let's just say you're head coach day one. We know your feelings about Justin Fields as a Bear, but let's take that hat off for a second. Fantasy asset, Russell Wilson fantasy asset, day one coming into camp. Who is your starter right now? And then what would you like to see happen for this team? And who are you most excited about on any of these 3 teams that these guys have left in the last couple of years?
This is the Justin Fields thing. Here I am stammering and stuttering. I don't understand it. Right? They could have traded him all last season, before the season. They could have traded him earlier this offseason for something. They gave him away. I've said time and time again, Ryan Pace is not a good NFL GM. I'm not sure he'd even be a good Madden GM because this trade probably would get blocked by the Madden algorithm at some point. I think Justin Fields came out and into the team, to the Bears, and said, "It looks like you're going to deal me. If you could, I'd prefer to go to Pittsburgh, vice these other 2 teams that you're talking to." And so maybe Ryan Pace, being a nice guy, found that spot for him. Russell Wilson, number 1, doesn't need the money anymore. Number 2, maybe he's got 2 years left. But, I mean, some of these quarterbacks are playing into their late 30s, early 40s and being successful. I just don't understand what Pittsburgh was trying to accomplish by bringing both of them in, unless it was, hey, Russ, you're here for a year, make Justin Fields better, and then we're going to start Justin Fields. I think this is good news for Pickens because, as we mentioned, Deontay Johnson has left for what I think was just I don't know. I'm not a Bryce Young truther. I don't know. Maybe this makes him better. Adam Thielen is 112 years old. So maybe Deontay Johnson turns into the Adam Thielen role. But as far as Pittsburgh goes, I think they win on both fronts. $1.2 million for Russell Wilson. If he shits the bed, they turn to Justin Fields and hope for the best. Fields is still on his rookie contract, I believe, so they're getting him for dirt cheap as well. Now, I don't know how they're going to determine, like the Packers did with Jordan Love, they took a chance. Is Justin Fields going to be worth $40 million a year coming off his rookie deal? Probably not, but does Justin Fields' team think he deserves $40 million? That's a different story, right? The old Scott Boras trick. He just holds out until they sign for $40 million. I've said too much and probably not enough. I like this for Pittsburgh. I even sport the Pirates hat tonight on behalf of these 2 new quarterbacks. I think of the 2, Fields has got the better career in front of him, and Wilson his rearview mirror is kind of what he's looking at this point. So I am no longer never Fields.
Nice. I like that. We've moved up to hashtag maybe Fields. I like to see that. We're going to keep improving throughout the offseason. Again, folks, Justin Fields was traded for. This is not a free agent situation. We've talked a lot of free agency. A number of trades also went down this spring, and Justin Fields is a trade. So a 6th rounder to Pittsburgh for Justin Fields. And you had mentioned Deontay Johnson earlier to the Panthers. He was also traded away, and they got a 6th rounder and Dante Jackson, the defensive back, for him as well. So not free agency, but trades there. Jeff, I'll move to you. Who is maybe your favorite player to, benefit from this on any of these teams? And then who's maybe somebody like you're not as excited about?
Yeah, so this situation is interesting. I think the timeline is interesting. I wish I could be a fly in the Pittsburgh organization, because I wonder what Chicago was wanting for Fields prior to Russ signing after he got waived by Denver. Because I wonder if they were wanting a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Pittsburgh wasn't willing to give that, so they went with Russell. And then later on, nobody was buying Fields, so they gave him a 6th. So I think that might be important, because I think Fields might be the starter because you traded for him. I think Russell was just given because I don't think Arthur Smith liked the quarterback room he had when he came into Pittsburgh. But I'm not a fan of Arthur Smith either. That's another discussion for another day. And so I was just looking at this. So I was looking at just some numbers. When Arthur Smith was an OC or the head coach for Tennessee and then Atlanta, obviously, just the quarterback play was just not very good from a fantasy standpoint. And as we all know, he loved to run the ball. His rushing attempts were 10th in the league as an OC, then 2nd, 29th Matt Ryan year in Atlanta, and then 1st and 3rd the last 2 seasons. So the biggest winner in Pittsburgh in all of this is a running back reward. I think Jaylen Warren and then Najee may have a little bit in the tank, but I think those 2 are the biggest winners, and they're going to be a run-oriented offense. So I think they're the biggest winners from that standpoint. Whomever is starting, I think they're going to run the ball more. So that's who I would like to draft more on the Pittsburgh offense as a running back at this point. It is interesting, Denver getting rid of Russell. I don't know what they're going to do quarterback-wise. And it's not like they have great pieces around in the offense now with Traylon Judy out, just Sutton now. I don't know what Sean Payton's cooking up over there, but I don't think I'm buying it either right now either.
Yeah, interesting. I think Matty Styles likes to hear that Jaylen Warren take. He last year basically had Jaylen Warren taking over the number 1 running back position in Pittsburgh by week 8. That more or less did happen. They were kind of 50-50 down the stretch, but Jaylen Warren certainly more explosive. We'll see if he gets more work this year. Both of those guys were 22 and 23, respectively, in fantasy football points per game in PPR. 11.6 for Jaylen Warren, 11.5 for Najee Harris. So back in RB2s, I think there could be a better opportunity for those guys to both climb the charts because the quarterback play overall is better, and I think the Steelers will have more opportunities to score in general. So I like that. Okay. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, both Pittsburgh Steelers. Neither one of them, obviously, last year, both coming over. They've totally cleaned out. Kenny Pickett goes to back up Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, but he stays in Pennsylvania. Of course, he played his college ball at Pitt there as well, and they've cleaned house otherwise. So it'd be very interesting to see what they do with that new offense there. But George Pickens, pretty much the lone wolf right now, and we'll see what else they are able to bring in. I'm sure they're going to be drafting a number of guys during the NFL draft. All right, if you're just joining us here, before we get into our departure segment, please make sure that you are following us right here on the YouTube channel. If you're not on the YouTube channel, you're coming over from X, please just hit that link right there on the video. You can go into the YouTube page, open it up real quick, give us a like and subscribe. We much appreciate it. It does help the channel grow, but it also gives us a better opportunity to get the word out there about our content, and we much appreciate that. You can, of course, leave a comment right below as well. We get into all of our live comments live on the air. So if you want to give us your thoughts on the Pittsburgh Steelers situation, or maybe a departing situation for free agency, we would love to talk to you about that live right now on the air. So drop your comments below. Again, I'm Sky Guasco, your host for tonight, joined by Matt Styles and Jefferson as well. The boss is out. So the students are running the classroom today. We're very excited about that. So we're going to have some fun here with this next segment. We've talked a lot about the free agents moving, obviously, right? That's what free agency is about, reviewing what those players are and them moving to new teams. What does it mean for them? But oftentimes we don't think enough about the guys being left behind. And Jefferson just wrote a great article live on football.razzball.com. It dropped earlier this week. You can go check it out for free right now as you're watching the show or post. You can run it up and read his top players there. We're going to get into some of those in a second. But Jefferson, I'll go to you first here. Before we even talk names, you wrote up that article. What is so important about discussing and really looking in on the players who have been departed from the guys next man up, if you will, opportunity, or a player, going into a new situation? What does it look like for the departures on the free agency side?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting way to look at free agency. We're all excited about the new shiny objects on new teams and offenses and everything, but where they leave opportunity to be filled. Certain teams have bigger opportunities for them. Some others, like in my article that I wrote, I'm staying away from Minnesota completely this season. Even Aaron Jones. I don't want any part of that offense right now. I know. Do you want to have Sam Darnold as your quarterback?
Guy does.
I love me some Sammy D. And he probably won't be the quarterback. But go ahead.
Let's probably draft somebody. But yeah, it's just after Kirk Cousins went down in my article I wrote, the Vikings offense just wasn't the same from a fantasy standpoint. The quarterback play was outside the top 20. Even with Jefferson back, he's not going to get the targets or the quality of targets from Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was a top 5 points per game player while he was healthy. Then after that, it was just kind of a disaster. So, but the biggest winner to me right now, I know, Sky, you love this guy, but Zamir White. I think he might be the biggest winner of this offseason. Antonio Pierce was brought back as a head coach. That team just resonated with the way he coaches. He's a leader of men in that locker room, and they play their asses off for him, and you can just see that the way the Raiders ended the season. They gave the Chiefs a good run at the end there, and we're looking at Zamir White. When he was given the chance the last 4 games of the season, he averaged 21 carries for right at 100 yards. No running back averaged 20 carries last season at all. So I know Madison was brought in. He's more of a depth piece there because Abdullah is not going to bruise you in the middle like Zamir was and Jacobs was doing. So I could foresee him from a dynasty standpoint. I'm looking to require Zamir White everywhere I can. Everywhere. Sorry, Zamir. And just moving forward in drafts, he may in redraft leagues. I'm curious to see where he will lead. If he's a 3rd, 4th rounder, I think that's a fair place for him. I think he has room to end up the year as RB1 and be drafted as such in 2025.
I like that call. You guys know I love Zamir White. I've been kind of batting for him the last 2 seasons. Of course, the rookie didn't do much. Last year, he got the opportunity finally. And again, I've mentioned this multiple times, but I'll say it again quickly. Down the stretch in fantasy, Josh Jacobs did not play the final 5 games, which is your fantasy playoffs. Zamir White did, stepped up, had adequate, if not better, percentage, efficiency, and overall opportunity than Josh Jacobs. One thing Josh Jacobs has done very well in his career is score touchdowns. Zamir White should get those opportunities, and he's a better running back in general. And I think that this Raiders team will be able to improve. So I love Zamir White as well. Alexander Mattison, 700 yards on the ground last year in Minnesota. He did not score a single rushing touchdown. He had 3 receiving touchdowns, but did not score on the ground. So if he's just a 3rd down back, maybe 3rd and long, 2nd and long type back, I can live with that. We always have auxiliary backs at this point in fantasy, but Zamir White should be 1st and 2nd down, maybe 3rd downs, and then certainly short yardage and goal line. And if not Devontae Adams, I'm sure they're going to be running the ball inside the 5. So love me some Zamir White. Stiley, let's go to you, buddy. Who is your riser for the departure? So who's somebody that maybe they left that team, they're on a new opportunity? Who's somebody with the next man up opportunity for you?
I can actually go with a negative one as well. That kind of popped into my head as Jeff was talking. Outside of Trey McBride, who's Kyler Murray going to throw the football to? You don't have anybody left, right? So if you want to talk about free agent departure impact, you've got a number 1 quarterback getting paid a lot of money, stud tight end, right? Probably top 5, top 6 in fantasy drafts. But guess what? Rondale Moore, who was kind of rounding into form a little bit, he was starting to get more action and some gadget, right? So that Jaden Reed type stuff. If you can say that a rookie, Jaden Reed, had stuff, he did. But, and then Hollywood leaves, which I would have, by the way, Hollywood signed a 1 year equal to each year of the MVS contract. Mm-hmm. Kansas City probably lamenting the fact that they signed MVS for 3 years at the same amount they could have signed Hollywood for 3 years. But I digress. I think Kyler Murray is in for a long season. Doesn't have a great offensive line. He's got a stud tight end, but Michael Wilson is not him yet. Maybe he is one day, but I was always a fan of Rondale Moore and Hollywood Brown. I think Cliff Kingsbury has put the team back 3 or 4 draft classes. So that's a tough one for me. I do love Zamir White. I don't want to talk about him anymore because I want him to continue to fall. I'd rather talk about how much I love Alexander Madison and let's get him rising up the draft board. We talk about my riser in a little bit here, but I'd like to get your thoughts on what you think Kyler Murray's going to. And by the way, look at the division he's in.
Yeah. Yeah, trouble for Kyler Murray.
That's not a fun time division.
No, I mean, Aaron Donald retiring will help him, but the 49ers should be fine. Seahawks are reloading on defense, or getting younger at least. Maybe not the premier names we're used to, but they've made some moves this offseason to get rid of some older players and bring in some young opportunities. The Rams will be fine on defense. So I agree. I think it's going to be a tough season for him. And now, Marvin Harrison seems to be that kind of a copy paste into Arizona, but there is a world where things get funky in the draft. I mean, they might see more value dropping down to get maybe Malik Neighbors later or a Dunze or something else and selling off that 4 pick. So we'll see what happens with Marvin Harrison. But no matter what, the Cardinals do need to start acquiring wide receiver talent, albeit through the draft, and just kind of eat a couple of seasons, or, whatever's left of free agency. Tyler Boyd is still out there. Odell Beckham, who, I know mixed feelings, but bodies that are out there potentially to sign onto your team there. So we'll see what happens with Kyler Murray and the crew. Matt, why don't you go ahead and give us your riser now, a guy that just moved about 3 hours ago. We got pretty much breaking news here on a favorite player from all 3 of us, certainly going to play with one of your legendary favorite players. Who is your biggest riser currently?
My article will be in next week. Is that right, Sky? So yeah, you'll see this guy jump in my article, unless something else with like T. Higgins happens or we get another big name off the board. But my guy, Mike Williams, just moved from 44 overall in my rankings to 28. The reason behind that is because Devontae Adams comes out of Fresno State and he's just a dude, right? He's just a guy. And Aaron Rodgers makes him into a superstar. Now what we've come to find out is Devontae Adams was that guy. Yeah. He just needed to round into form. He needed someone to teach him, and he had studs with him in Green Bay. So whatever he learned, he turned into a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers is getting Mike Williams, who can get down the field, who can contest catches. We know Aaron likes to throw into small windows. We know he also likes to go back with a 17-step drop and throw it as far as he can and hope that the receiver can go get it. I always wish that Green Bay would have found a way to acquire Randy Moss, because that would have been the most prolific 1-2 punch, would have been Devontae and Moss with Aaron Rodgers throwing him passes. But I think Mike Williams can be Devontae Adams light. Nobody is Devontae Adams. Only Devontae is Devontae. I would talk, if I was Devontae, I'd talk about myself in the third person. That's just the way I would be. Mike Williams, I think, can go to the Pro Bowl in the AFC if he stays healthy. I would be happy with him being my wide receiver 2 if I start with a running back, wide receiver, tight end combo in the first 3. I'd love to scoop Mike Williams late 3rd, early 4th if everybody's healthy. Because Breece Hall can run the football. Breece Hall can catch the football. We know Garrett Wilson can do what Garrett Wilson does. Now Aaron Rodgers has got that additional weapon. And the rumors I'm hearing out of the New York Jets front office, not that I know anybody there, but I read stuff, is that they are looking at adding Brock Bowers in the first. They do that, this offense is going to be absolutely sick.
Yeah. Gas, if you will.
It will be gas.
I absolutely agree. And as far as the comparison to Devontae Adams, obviously Devontae is kind of in a tier of his own, but I know what you mean with Aaron Rodgers. But I would argue, and you know that, look, other than you, I'm Devontae's number 2 fan. How about that? Different skill set, especially in the red zone. Like Devontae Adams has maybe the best feet in the entire NFL getting open outside of Keenan Allen, but he doesn't have the size of Mike Williams. Mike Williams is dominant, like as just a big opportunity in the red zone. And I love both of those options. So Aaron Rodgers also is kind of climbing. We're not talking about him yet because it's, you know, a different program and we want to make sure he's 100% healthy, but I love to see him bouncing back there as well. And Alan Lazard, while not on those guys' tier, is going to open some opportunity as well because he's a true receiver in his own right. I like that a lot. All right. So
now,
Mike,
can you
yes,
stick with me for a second? Imagine this, right? You go against the wide receiver start. Let everybody chase Jefferson, Sun God, all of those players, and you sit back and you load up on Saquon and who can you get in the second? Give me a running back you can get in the second. So you've got Saquon at 1-5, Derrick Henry in the second, right? Late in the second. You come back in the third with Trey McBride. The fourth, Mike Williams, and like the 9th or 10th, you get Aaron Rodgers. Boom. You're welcome.
Yeah. Right. And honestly, as far as like a 4th round tight end, you probably don't even need him. And if you wanted to, you could probably even you might even get Kelsey in the 2nd or 3rd round this year, or, you know, Andrews or somebody like that with the tight end falling a little bit. So we'll see what happens. Laporte is probably going to go first, maybe in the 2nd round, but we'll see what happens there. I like that a lot. So Mike Williams, just a couple hours ago before he went live, goes to the Jets. He gets picked up. Just $15 million for 1 year. So it's a prove it deal. Of course, he's got to get healthy, but he was the wide receiver 10 in PPR, guys, in the first 3 games of the season before he was out for the season. That's when we saw Justin Herbert dip. That's when we saw the Chargers dip. Then Herbert got hurt. Keenan got hurt. Eckler got hurt. The season was pretty much over for the Bolts, unfortunately. But first month of the season, they were one of the hottest teams in the NFL. I'll talk quickly about mine as well. Mine's kind of funky. So we're talking about departures, and this is an add and a departure. But Joe Mixon moving out of Cincinnati opens an opportunity for Zach Moss coming in to Cincinnati. So the departure is Joe Mixon, but the addition and that player taking advantage is the new Bengal, Zach Moss. Zach Moss was the running back 27 in PPR last year in points per game, but let's put that into context. The first 6 weeks, Jonathan Taylor pretty much didn't play. Zach Moss didn't play week 1, and he got hurt in week 4. Other than that, he had 21, 23, 34, and 18 PPR fantasy points in 4 of those 6 games, and he didn't play or got hurt in the other 2. The rest of the season obviously became Jonathan Taylor time, and he basically didn't have much to do, Zach Moss. But when he got that opportunity, he was a bona fide running back 1. He was a top 5 running back in 3 of those 4 weeks that he started, and he ended up basically a back end running back 2, only playing about the first month and a half consistently. Joe Mixon ended up scoring 9 touchdowns last year with the Bengals. That was without Joe Burrow pretty much for half the season. And Zach Moss only scored 3. So you might split the difference, give Zach Moss maybe 6 touchdowns with the work that he did in that earlier half with a revamped, again, Bengals offensive line with Joe Burrow coming back healthy. I love the Zach Moss play. And I just don't feel like he's a fun name. He's not a fancy name, an exciting name for ADP. So Matt, to your point earlier, who can you get in the first, 2nd round? Okay, Saquon and Derrick Henry. We'll make it up. Zach Moss might be a 6th round RB3 who honestly might end up being a RB, 12 to 15 on a weekly basis in that offense with upside there. So I like Zach Moss a lot. He is going to be my riser with Joe Mixon departing to Houston and Zach Moss coming into Cincinnati. All right, gentlemen, we're going to wrap up here with our fallers. Same conversation. Who's a player you're not as excited? Maybe somebody has come in and kind of starting to, crush the vibe a little bit, or they're coming in, they're losing opportunity. There's an extra guy there. What is maybe an issue you have with a certain player? Jeff, I'll go to you first on this one. Who's a player you're not as excited due either to a departure or just kind of a change up in that offense in general?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above. It's sticking with the Bears again. Cole Kmet. I liked the way he was playing last year with Fields. It was playing really well. They've kind of blown up that roster now. They have Keenan. They brought in Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, a lot of running backs. I just don't know how many mouths you can feed with a rookie quarterback. So I think Cole Kmet is probably sliding down. I don't know if he was even a top 10, but I mean, he was maybe top 12 in 12-man leagues. So he's a tight end 1, but I think now he's probably more of a tight end 2, maybe even lower, especially with Gerald Everett going there. Now I don't know what his role looks like, but they signed him to a deal. So probably staying away from Kmet this season.
Yeah, you mentioned Gerald Everett, man, and he's been one of my favorite players just athletically for years, even a stint with the Seahawks and the Rams, but he can't seem to stay healthy either. So a lot of times, man, these teams are just grabbing depth pieces like they have to. Cole Kmet was the tight end 8 in PPR last year. He was tied with Trey McBride in PPR, and down the stretch, he played quite well there. He had a game of over 28 fantasy points, another one of 18, 24, another one of 16 in your fantasy playoffs. So Cole Kmet with upside, but as you mentioned, a rookie quarterback, whether it's Caleb or somebody else, coming in and all those new weapons, it'll be interesting. Matt, I'll turn to you. Who do you have as your faller here for the departure section?
I've been a Deontay Johnson truther since he was a rookie. I don't. Sky, you and I have talked about it. I don't know if Bob was really in on the discussion. It's more you and I kind of poking fun, but he's turning into Antonio Brown light. Right? He kind of forced his way into the doghouse with his griping, the fact that he wouldn't block, he was dropping passes. By the way, he dropped passes his whole career, but he was getting better, trending in the right direction. But I have no doubt in my mind that something took place in the locker room. Something took place in contract talks where Mike Tomlin finally said, yeah, I'm good, right? We'll figure it out without you. Let me go ahead and get a draft pick, maybe a DB, and they got both of those. Pittsburgh's good on the back end, but they saw or heard something from Deontay that they didn't like. He's a PPR machine, but can Bryce Young support 2 PPR machines, one that's 112 and one that's kind of living in his own little I'm the Keyshawn Johnson, Antonio Brown, Terrell Owens diva area, and I don't know that Bryce Young is going to stand up to veteran receivers and tell them, hey, I run this huddle and it's my team, my game. And then what happens when Deontay doesn't get 11 targets in week 1? So I'm dropping him down my list. In fact, I just had Hollywood Brown move up 2 slots, Deontay Johnson down 2 slots. Maybe call it the Patrick Mahomes effect. I don't know. I call it the fact that Deontay's just in his head too much.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting, man. Obviously, I mean, just by far, Carolina was the worst offense on a number of metrics last year. We'll see, they can only go up, really. But, you mentioned him as a PPR machine, and I think we think of Deontay. Well, I know we think of Deontay Johnson that way with his early years with Ben Roethlisberger. 2021 was his best year. He played 16 games, 107 catches, 170 targets, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That was his best year as a pro by far. But 2 years ago, 86 catches, so 21 less in one more game played, 0 touchdowns. Somehow didn't score at all. Last year, he did score 5 touchdowns, but he only played 13 games, 51 catches, and only 700 yards. So he just doesn't have big play potential. He's more, instead of a PPR machine, I think it's more of like a possession receiver, which I think is a PPR player, but without the explosion, if you will. And I think Adam Thielen's that at this point as well. So we'll see if that helps Bryce Young. I think that it'll help him, but I don't like Deontay. I totally agree with you on that as well. One more reminder, everybody, before I get into my final faller and we get out of here. I see 500 plus people coming in. Many of you coming in from X on the Razzball channel. We still appreciate the support, everybody. It would really mean the world to us if you wouldn't mind taking 1 second and jumping over to YouTube. Find us on YouTube and subscribe to the page. We're over 1,600 subscribers. Last year, we were about 800 this time. So we've already doubled that. We're very excited about it. But if you could, please jump over to YouTube, give us a subscribe. We would really appreciate it. And drop a comment. Let us know your favorite move and player you're excited about or not excited about based on a departure from other players. Once again, I'm joined by Styles and Jefferson tonight. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, on the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube show and the podcast. With the boss out, we got the kids running the classroom, having a lot of fun with it. All right, boys, I'm going to get you in here on mine. This one this one makes me sad, right? I mean, anybody that's been listening to our content for the last couple of years here, I am not shy in the fact that I'm a Justin Herbert, a Marcus Mariota, and all the other Ducks homer. I live in Eugene. I literally live 2 miles away from Autzen Stadium. I watched him play high school at Sheldon. Huge fan of Justin Herbert, and I'm a big backer. But with what's gone on with the Chargers over the last 3 weeks, basically since Harbaugh came in, and then we bring in an offensive coordinator who doesn't throw the ball, and Greg Roman. Then we get rid of the 2 best wide receivers on the team. Then Austin Eckler leaves, who was actually the best wide receiver on the team last year, and Gerald Everett. I have to fade my boy Herbert. And I don't want to, but it's just the right thing to do, unfortunately. As I mentioned with Mike Williams, Justin Herbert was the quarterback 4 in 6-point per passing leagues over the first 4 weeks of the season. Mike Williams goes down. Herbert gets hurt himself. Eckler, Keenan, everybody else got injured too. And it really was a downfall for the rest of the season. I expect him to bounce back, but I just don't see the Chargers throwing enough to make Herbert that upper echelon we know he can be talent-wise. The talent is there. That's not the issue. He's broke all the rookie records, and he's done all the things individually. But I don't think are going to be that type of offense, and he won't be that type of quarterback in fantasy this year. So unfortunately, for the first time in his career, he's just off my draft board. Because even if I get him in the 10th, 11th, 12th round, I don't know that I want him as my starting quarterback anyway. I probably want a younger quarterback with upside potentially over Justin Herbert. So unfortunately right now, Justin Herbert is way down my quarterback rankings and probably off my draft board. He was the QB 11 last year, but 21, 23, 30, 25 fantasy points over the first month, a bye week, and then it went downhill from there outside of 2 mix. And of course, he didn't play in your fantasy playoffs. So Justin Herbert is the guy I will be fading, unfortunately, and I'm disappointed about that there. We got a bold prediction here that Tyler Boyd will be the number 1 wide receiver here for the Chargers. I'd love to see that. Of course, our boy Josh Palmer gets a boost there individually. We'll see what happens. But Gus Edwards isn't a receiving running back, right? Maybe Blake Corum comes in. We'll see what happens with the Michigan Connect. All right, gentlemen, we're up to 550. Again, make sure you find everything we're doing right here on the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube show. We much appreciate it. We have episodes for you every night, but we also have the podcast repurposing every day. So those of you on the go, please make sure to catch us on the podcast as well. Leave a rate and review. We much appreciate it. Hit the bell and subscribe right here to the channel. Find all of our articles for free on football.razzball.com. And of course, you can find my boys on the Twitter machine as well. That's at Jefferson__21, and that's at Styles08. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, at Sky Guasco, and everything Razzball at Razzball NFL. We'll catch you next time, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your evening, and best of luck in your baseball fantasy drafts.
Let's go.
We'll see y'all soon, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your night. We are out of here.